welcome to the Munday Sounds podcast. I think a good place to start with you, Pete, is at the moment Cantomania is experiencing a bit of a popularity revival or a bit of a boom or explosion, I think was the words. Like, tell us a little bit about how that's come about.
Right. So Cantomania is actually a project that has been in the works for many years. I'd say it's about 7 years or so. And it actually started with another DJ, Jamie, who runs Akatana in Fulton, which is probably one of the most popular underground clubs in Hong Kong. And he had his wedding party in 2018, and he invited me to play a Canto set. And I've always been playing Cantonese music in my sets, which had been ranging from commercial. I played in commercial clubs, very top 40-ish. I was a resident for many years in a club called FLM, which is a kind of LGBTQ plus, or gay bar is probably an easy way to put it. Nowadays, I think we have to watch the monikers a bit. And I'd always been introducing a little bit of Cantonese music into the sets, which were mostly British, American pop, K-pop, a little bit of J-pop as well. And then from that moment after Jimmy's wedding in 2018, he sort of asked me to come play with him on his Cantomania nights, which were essentially just Cantonese disco nights. And at that time, they were sort of popular, but, I would say the attendance was maybe 30 people max, 40, very, very casual, like a house party, but a fun house party. And as Jimmy was focused more on different music, I think, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's very focused on things like, soulful, house, techno, disco, kind of uplifting songs in those genres. I sort of started doing Cantomania a bit more. During the pandemic, it was hosted at Min in Sheung Wan. So we'd have it once every quarter, maybe, at Min. And, especially during the beginning, we were restricted, remember, 7 p.m. to 10. And that was it, 10. Actually, a couple of times, I think we had we had some checks on we had people checking whether everyone has scanned it on the app and that kind of thing. At 10 p.m. sharp, it was show's over, lights on, everyone's checking. Luckily, we said, you guys have to scan the app, okay? Don't just come and give me one of the screen grab or something. Yeah. So that was a challenge at the time. But they were very passionate and popular nights, but just because of restrictions, I couldn't do many things at that time. After the pandemic started lifting a bit, other clubs like Quality Goods Club, Frank's, and quite a few different locations started asking about it. And eventually we started doing it monthly at Quality Goods Club, which started with just me. So I think the first time I did it was Chinese New Year. I'd like to say it's 2022. I'll have to fact check this. And it started at 9 p.m. and 8 hours later, it was still me playing. Yeah? And I think I'd exhausted literally every track that I had. But I just gone really everything in the record box was played. Yeah. So I think, that was 8 or 9 hour set or something. And then after that, I thought, wouldn't this be fun if I had some other people to help me out, Because, one, you can talk to, everyone's oh, who's that Guilo up there playing Chinese music? But I can't even talk to anyone because literally I'm just up on the decks. Yeah. So I asked Pete Friday, who, I'd known for a while. Pete Friday's two DJs, is Bolsing and INK. INK I'd known for a really long time because his wife was actually my old colleague in a different world, over 10 years ago. And then I asked a few of the DJs, and then the kind of 4 DJs who were the main part of Cantomania, which is myself, Bolsing, INK, and Stefan. Stefan actually, he's been my friend for a long time. When we were in high school in Hong Kong, he was in punk bands, and I just loved punk music, so I was a fan of those bands. And, we'd always kept in touch and hung out, and then I'd finish a gig, and I was hanging out in the street outside 7-Eleven having a beer. Sometimes I just have this habit of oh, I don't want to go home. I'm just going to go to 7-Eleven like a hobo and listen to my own music. And then I bumped into him, and he was oh, I saw you have a Cantomania next week. Can I come? And I was because he actually used to run the Canton Disco every Nin Choi, the day 2 of Chinese New Year, every year before pandemic. So he was the OG to me, right? So I was yeah, come down, just come play. And I think that was a Soho House. And then the sort of team came together, and we sort of have guest slots from different people at times.
Yeah.
So it's a very long way of telling you the brief history of Cantomania.
Nice. Do you see like I guess like from the very beginning when you did like the wedding party, the type of energy, or the very first Quality Goods Club compared to kind of 7 years later, all the sold out shows that you're doing in multiple different locations? Like, can you describe like maybe the energy in the music? Is it different, and as well as the crowd?
Yeah, I think the early years had helped us define what the sound was, because when we started doing it, I was focused a lot on like 80s and 90s, like remix, like a bit like in 80s British or American pop music, you know, like for example, if you, I don't know, Culture Club or, you know, any of those bands, they have these really crazy extended remixes that are quite arty, and the same with Hong Kong in a way in that era. Like if you look at like Leslie Cheung or Grasshopper or any of those artists, they have those really extended remixes where like some producer or remixer was like, right, now it's my time to go crazy. And, you know, and almost like that art pop sort of thing that you saw a lot in the 80s and bits of the 90s anyway. So we were playing a lot of that. And then I started thinking about introducing things that I used to play at the FLM. So that would be more like 90s, 00s, like Twins or Sammy, things like that. And then I used to play a bit of remixing artists. So like artists like Finger Gap and Zhong Yixi, who are local artists who do like dubstep and bass music, footwork. And after that, I started noticing which sounds are working, which are not working. So in the early days, I think we started to find the sound, and we sort of settled on this is really classic tunes, not manipulated too much, of course, with twists and turns. Yeah. But we found that we had a couple sets where someone had gone like, oh, I'm going to play like a, you know, tech house set with like echoed in cantopop. And there was one set where like, I was like the next DJ on, and we had half an hour to go. And the guy, I thought I loved his set, but like there were people in the crowd being like, fuck, like, do it, Omo, like shouting. They were pissed. And I realized, like, this crowd, they were like fucking pissed about it. And I realized this crowd is like a bit like tribal in a way, right? They don't want it to. I mean, I think that people want to have exciting new stuff and presentations, but if it strays too far. And I noticed that with certain crowds, like I did a night called Emo Night at Quality Goods Club because I used to love punk and emo. And that was the same. When you played something that people felt like wasn't emo or punk, they were like, "This, what the fuck is this shit?" You know, they get visibly pissed. But then I noticed, like, well, I mean, that's cool, right? Because they're like actually really passionate crowds. So that's sort of how it developed. And now we're definitely, I think the energy now is like the same, you know, on that level, like, which is quite passionate into it. I would say that energy and love for it has been consistent, but it was just us honing the tracks a bit more. And I think now we're going to evolve more, because I feel like the crowds and the tastes are maturing a bit. So maybe we can start exploring more of, you know, going down different routes rather than focusing on classics. But I think, of course, DNA is always classics. You
mentioned before, like when you were DJing on your own in the early days, doing the 8-hour stints, and they're going, "Who's this Guaylo playing this?" Did you feel that was like hard to get validation then, maybe because of that as well in the early days? Or not so much? I know you're from Hong Kong, but
I mean, I'm from Hong Kong, but at the same time, I think because I feel like the DJ world, we're all like pretty small, so you assume like, oh, everyone knows who I am. But then, you know, the thing is actually other people really don't know who you are. You know, especially like the bigger you get, the more you realize you have to remind yourself. You got to kind of introduce yourself to people, because like they might just think, oh, who's this white dude? Like they don't even, maybe they've never seen me before, right? So I didn't think it was a validation thing. I think people felt like, I'd always had this feeling of like that, oh, it's quite unusual. And I think people felt, oh, this is cool, because you know, in Hong Kong, you know, what's happened in the last few years, you know, regardless of whether it's economic, political, with the rise of, you know, more Mandarin speaking, more influence from, you know, for example, the mainland economy. And, you know, a lot of things have happened. A lot of people emigrated, things like this. I feel that people are, you know, a bit more, you know, aware that to have Hong Kong and Cantonese culture, that you need to use Cantonese, you need to support Cantonese cultural products, and you need to support your culture a bit, you know. So I think this is, I think a lot of people saw it in that context. Oh yeah, it's cool. Foreigners like it. You know, foreigners are supporting it. Some of my friends from school said like, oh, you gotta be careful that it doesn't, you know, look like cultural appropriation, right? And then what I noticed is like, I think cultural appropriation seems to be much more like a thing in America and like the UK, but in Hong Kong, I haven't really seen people get too worried about it. But you never know, right? It's something that I'm aware of for sure.
Yeah.
I do notice on the YouTube comments, like, for example, I did a interview with SCMP, you know, a few people said like, oh, I mean, this guy is cool, but then how come it's always a white guy that has to champion local culture, which I was thinking about, should I, you know, comment on stuff, but then I was like, nah, you know what? This is, hey, it's freedom of speech, man. And also, like, I agree with that in some ways. It's a valid comment, you know? But I've had a habit of looking at comments for a long time on articles and interviews, and I kind of stopped doing that because, like, yeah, you get the whole gamut of like, oh, who the fuck is this white guy? To like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. And you can't really believe any of it too much, you know? Take it with a grain of salt. Like back in the day, there's Hong Kong Community Radio where I used to DJ live. Before live streaming became a bit like problematic because of all the licensing and the algorithms got really good at detecting it. Hong Kong Community Radio, they had live set and I used to go on and just play my set. And then I get like so many like people just like trolling. It's pretty funny. Like someone's like, God, man, I've never seen some shit DJ in my whole life. And then back then, I think I'll drop a comment. I was like, yeah, you know, that's what your mother said when you were born. You were like the ugliest baby she'd ever seen. I mean, it's kind of fun. But like now I'm like, yeah, not doing that anymore. But at the time, I was like, DJ, I'd be like, yeah, fuck you too. Yeah. Anyway.
Like mid-set.
Yeah. It was fun back then when live streaming mute DJing was still a thing.
Yeah, but I bet you can also hit back on the live streams or in person as well when you can speak Cantonese as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
I mean, I think that's also... If you look at certain local artists who are like for example, Serini, she's really good at it. I think she would just go on and just randomly talk on, you know, IG Live for ages. But I think I probably need to get a bit more in that mindset, you know? But I do a lot of interviews in Cantonese. I think the difference between doing English and Cantonese interviews is I think for Cantonese, I need to be much more like aware of the tone. I think, you know, in English, I think English is my first language, obviously. So, you know, I think in second language, you always have to just be more mindful of things you're going to say before, because it can definitely come out the wrong way. Yeah.
And then as you consider then the behind the Cantonese culture as it's starting to maybe spread across the globe a little bit more, the Hong Kong diaspora, you know, in places like America and the UK. In the last 12 months, you've done gigs in London, in Manchester, under the Cantomania brand. Like, how has that come about and how has that been received from those living abroad? Yeah,
so I'd say there's a bit of a long story behind how the UK connection started. So we mentioned Akadana before. There's a DJ called Dan Neo who's, plays a lot of different styles, but he's quite well known within certain genres of techno. And he has a friend called Ben in London who runs a label called Konji Sounds. So I met up with Ben, and he had been doing a sort of cantopop night, sort of once in a while, I'd say, maybe once a year or so. So I met him for a drink, and he said, "Oh, we're having a party in Shadwell," which was last September. So myself, Ben, Vince, who has a record label called Half East Records in London, and a couple other DJs, we kind of threw a night. So that was actually not under my label, just to be clear.
Yeah.
It was under Ben's and Vince's label, and also Zenegeist, which is a Hong Kong, London organization. And they invited me to play. So I didn't really know what to expect because I wasn't sure. You know, first of all, London's big. I asked some of my friends, but they're like, well, I live in Edgware, the party's in Shadwell. How am I going to get home? Like, because the night bus is sometimes sketch or just weird.
Just get on the bus, man. Just go
Get on the bus. Buses improved, but I used to live in London 20 years ago, and some of the night buses was just like pretty horror shows. But
yeah, but they're character building, aren't they?
No, it's fun, man. It's still fun, though. Uber is like 50 quid. Yeah. I think last time I made a mistake of having to take an Uber home when I was like crying about the price of it. So anyway, we did the night in Shadwell, and I think, first of all, it's a place called the George, which has like indie nights and things. And I think some of the staff there were kind of looking like, what's going to happen tonight? And then when they saw 200 Hong Kong people and mostly a few stray Guailos coming as well, but it's really majority Hong Kong people.
Yeah.
Singing along to everything from classic Leslie Cheung or Anita Moy to cartoon songs, advertisements, because I started playing a lot of that stuff.
Yeah,
I think one of my friends said God, this looks like some cult, and it was actually pretty fun. So yeah, that was a great night. So afterwards, I kept in touch with Ben and Vince, and I met a guy in Hong Kong who lives in Manchester now, and he has no experience of putting on club nights, and he's like, I want to do this in Manchester. So I said, okay, just let me know. And then he actually went and booked this venue called Gorilla, which is a 600-person club. When I went there, I saw posters. It was artists that I really like, that are I consider to be mid-tier artists. So I was like, holy shit, man, how are we going to pull this off? But I mean, to Benny's credit, there's a Ben for the London show and then Benny for the Manchester show. It's two different people. He went to every single Chinese and Hong Kong restaurant and business and did it face to face. Flyers. He did all the WhatsApp groups. And when we had the night in Manchester, which was organized by Benny, that was an association with me and Cantomania and also Konji Sounds and Half East Records, the people I'd met before, because I'd recommended to Benny, look, if we're going to do this, bring up the guys from London. And also another DJ who lives around Cheshire area, sort of called Ping to My Pong, who's an Akadana resident. He-Man knows him as well. He moved to the UK, so he came as well. So it was just all the crew, very diaspora crew. We got together, and I was just mind blown. And there were actually people who came from Hong Kong to watch the show, and from all over the UK too.
That was this year, right?
Yeah, just a month ago. Yeah.
Nice. Did you go specifically for that event then? Or you had some other travel plans around that?
Well, sort of, because my dad's English, so my grandmother had her 105th birthday around the same time.
Congratulations.
Yeah, sure. No worries. Yeah. So she got a card from the King and Queen, which she was very pleased about. She looked at my DJ videos. I think she just said, yeah, that's great. I'm not sure how much she sort of got, but she was still pretty, with it. So
did you wheel her out to the event?
No. I don't. No, she actually could move quite quickly. I mean, I'm glad that she saw the videos of the night, though, and she was pretty impressed with it. So, yeah. So the Manchester thing was pretty out of control. And it was a lot of fun, yeah. But it was a different vibe because it's in a venue which bands play in. So the stage is up, I feel like sometimes you can't see. Literally there's lights. I can't fucking see people. So you gotta go by what you hear. Is this working out? Rather than in clubs, I feel like, I can kind of go on visual cues as well. This song is working, that's not working, So in a way, having the bigger shows puts you in a different atmosphere. It's almost turned into a concert more than actual, what I consider to be a club night, So it's sort of hybrid. It's a weird one. Yeah.
How does that translate to the bigger venues over this side of the world then? So, because I've seen you've done events at Oil.
Yeah, Oil. Yeah. So in Shenzhen, we did sort of city pop nights. It was Sunday night, so it was a bit more chilled. But yeah, Oil I still feel is more like a clubby atmosphere. Yeah. But when I've done things, I did thing in West Kowloon in Wonderland. I think it's Wonderland. Yeah, there, and a Clock and Flap as well. And that definitely has a sort of festival stage atmosphere. The good thing of those things, I think people are there already and they kind of just go with the flow more. I think with clubs, people, they can show up, especially in Hong Kong, and be like, I'm not feeling the vibe, and just go to another night. So then in clubs, you definitely feel more pressure, which is why, for example, I think nowadays, when I started DJing in Hong Kong, and it was 20 years ago, right? So I used to play, my first ever club in Hong Kong was called Chapter 3. Which was Buddha Lounge. I don't know if you guys remember Buddha Lounge.
Heard of.
Yeah, legendary.
Where was that?
It's Penicillin now. So what, Paisanos?
Yeah.
Downstairs. So Chapter 3 was a kind of classy cocktail bar. Then Buddha Lounge was more techno until 1 p.m. That kind of
Afters.
vibe. Yeah. So I started DJing there. I was playing like funk, hip hop, like kind of acid jazzy stuff. And so it's just a complete like journey. Actually, I can't remember my original point on this, but anyway, never mind.
Well, but kind of going back to, you've been DJing for 20 plus years,
Yeah.
and clearly you've been exploring a lot of different genres, because you love a lot of different types of music.
Yeah.
And we can see your passion in all the different kinds of music that you have. Then you mentioned that you actually also produced music before.
Yeah.
But can you describe a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I'd always had like, ambitions to produce. And I think the thing is though, I think DJs naturally, there's this whole notion now that DJs are producers, but in fact, I feel like it's a totally different thing. You see, I think the rise of EDM has made DJs kind of need to be producers to, get famous, whether it's like deadmau or like John Summit or any of those guys in the EDM world, right? Tiesto, all those guys, they're known as both, right? So I think, I feel like the DNA of a DJ is more like a party guy, and having fun. Whereas like producers, you gotta love sitting in a room for like 10 hours and listening to a kick drum for like 30 minutes in a row and deciding which kick drum sounds best. And I felt like I'd actually not cared too much about some of that stuff, So I'd had to sort of train myself to. And during the pandemic, when all the shows were off, suddenly, I guess like everyone took up their hobbies during pandemic, whether it was like, I don't know, like sommelier, like gardening, or like, and I thought, yeah, exactly, right? And, I got into a lot of things, but producing was one. So, those were like kind of a bit more like mixing techno breaks, like kind of Balearic chill, with sample music, sample culture. And I'd released like 4 EPs at that time. And, and also had a friend called Leo, who's the artist Fingercap. And at that time, and he sort of was giving me advice on what to do. And there were, I think at that time, the culture in Hong Kong was very supportive, with a lot of raves in like, factory buildings, and we met like a lot of producers. So with Cantomania now, one thing which I'm doing is starting to release original music under Cantomania. I'd had my previous record label, Ho Lun Sang Records, which was focused on like lots of different things. Like, so Ho Lun Sang means like fucking awesome records. So that focused on lots of different genres. But now Cantomania, which is sort of offshoot of Ho Lun Sang, that is definitely focusing on Cantonese. So all the artists that we're going to release are actually people that I've met while I was producing, getting advice, and a lot of them met in kind of like raving, at different parties during the pandemic, So it's sort of that was a sort of full circle journey. So I've got like another album coming out this year. I don't want to say a date because I always feel like I'm gonna screw myself. It's coming out in like 2 months. Like shit, I got like 2 days to finish this. But that's what you need a deadline, right? Sometimes.
Yeah. That's it. Well, put it on the line. What's the date?
Oh, man.
There's only 6 months left of this year.
Just sometime in 2025.
But I feel at that time the deadline is so crucial, because like I'd have tracks where I'd had like 20 versions of them, and then I'd be like, God, I actually like the first version better than the 19th one, and it becomes a pain in the ass. So I think, one of the guys I released is Pressure K, who, he's like a bass artist. And he was like, 70%. If you're 70% happy, just go for it. Cause like, that 30% is just never going to come, So yeah, that was the thing with production at the time. And I think the first albums I got them mastered by someone in London. Because I was like, that's the other thing, mix and mastering. I was like, I've always did it and put it on a big speaker. I'd be like, sounds fucking awful. So, that's just like, right, yeah. I'm going to get this done professionally, because like, and the funny thing is, the first albums I released, the way I found that was because I messaged this UKG like artist, like Sammy Virgil. And he's much bigger nowadays, but back then he was getting big. And I thought like, oh, I really like his tracks. Like, I want to ask him. And then he gave me tons of advice on how to do it. And I was like, God, this guy's like, I'm like a no one, and this guy's massive. And he still took the time to message me personally, which is cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, there's sort of like this big journey with releasing stuff. So now like the releases I'm doing are focusing like entirely on Cantonese music.
Yeah.
But like Cantopop, like reimagined, you know, and that's going to be one of the directions for Cantomania. Yeah.
Okay. Have you dropped any of those tracks into your sets so far?
Yes, I have.
How are they received?
You got the right time.
Yeah.
The right moments, especially late night, I feel.
Yeah.
I feel with DJing, you know, like in the beginning, I think maybe the first hour or so, you know, people get into the mood. I think for our people, because especially if they bought tickets, you know, it's very Hong Kong. It's like money's worth. Gonna show up, get there on time. And then so it gets quite into the classics quite quickly, I'd say. And then, you know, by the last hour or so, then I see like, oh, let's try a couple of these things. With the caveat that like I had an option in my head, like, okay, 30 seconds later to a minute later, if this doesn't work, we can go this way or that way, you know, which is kind of a thing that I learned from playing in FLM at the gay bar, you know, which was sometimes, you know, people had very strong opinions about certain things. That's left field.
Yeah.
So, you know, just if you feel like the crowd's hating it, then like, right, yeah, let's get out here, you know. But no, it's been good. It's definitely good. But I think the stuff that, you know, I've released actually released a new EP by Finger Gap yesterday, who's the Cantonese footwork artist. Yeah, his tracks have been always received really well, and especially our nights I could do them, you know, the last section, I'd say.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'd be playing the last section like 3 to 4, sometimes a min, and I'd be like, right, let's drop some Finger Gap tracks, like the footwork. And then I'd be like, oh, crap, I've actually just played like 3 of his tracks in a row. I don't want to make it seem like I'm just like playing his music, you know? Like, anyway.
It's good music.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, at the same time, you know, that's why my plan is to expand our network of, you know, releases. So, you know, you can definitely play releases from a lot more people. I mean, obviously, I still play releases from other remixers that aren't on my label. And I mentioned the artists like Zhong Yixi, who's really, really creative and an amazing DJ, and his tracks are really cool. And that he takes like elements from like everything from like Bruce Lee to like modern pop tracks, like classic Cantopop, and then, you know, he reimagines with like these crazy bass spins on them, drum and bass, dub, like, you know, bass 130, that kind of thing. So there's another guy called Ryan Lee is God, who I really love his production. And there's quite a few artists, you know, there are a few on SoundCloud that are like kind of unnamed secret artists.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know if, I remember I DM'd them on SoundCloud. I was like, who are you?
Yeah.
It's like, no reply. Like, okay. I think some of them might be like producers in Hong Kong that are like a bit like pissed off, and they just put out like secret remixes and things. Because you notice in Cantopop as well, there's certain like tracks where like there's a bridge in them, and then like the producer's like, right, I'm going to do like 20-second bridge, just like glitch, like drum and bass, like GABA, or like, you know, like, oh, let's put like a funky guitar solo licks in here, you know? And you can tell like some of the musicians are like, right, now it's my time to have but I mean, that's like pop in general, right? You know, I'd say they always had that space for a little bit of like underground within the pop, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I guess also kind of makes those songs kind of perfect for a club night as well.
Yeah,
because they
100%.
It's not pure like pop songs where I guess like you see people sing on TVB, but somehow it's got this. It's very like at least the Cantomania event that I was at.
Yeah.
The energy is, as you described earlier, it's very nostalgic, but also very heavy hitting at the same time.
Yeah.
Extremely passionate.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when we were talking about especially the Y2K era, right, there's some tracks, because I think the context of that was, you know, at the time, just to go to my personal history, I was in university, and rave was massive in Hong Kong, like rave scene. Every weekend we'd have massive people come. Like,
You study in Hong Kong for uni?
I did my master's in Hong Kong U, but I did my undergraduate in Edinburgh, in Scotland. But, you know, the summer is long. It's like my parents like, what are you doing this summer? Like I don't know, going out like every night. Like, and then my dad's like, I try to get some internship or something just to not piss my parents off too much. And then especially around times in university, which is like 99 to like 2003, like rave culture was massive in Hong Kong, and we'd have like people like every weekend, whether it was like someone like Sasha, you know, Tigweed, like those guys, like Lee Burridge, who actually used to play in Hong Kong in the 90s and then got big afterwards.
He was back recently, wasn't
Yeah, he was. Yeah, exactly. All those artists like Hybrids, just any big rave artist, David Seaman. So at that time, this rave culture was massive. You know, the raves are huge. They were like 10,000 people, especially in convention center, like Kai Tak, which is Star Hall, which closed.
Yeah.
There was a club called Pink Mau Mau in Taiwan. Like there's a place called CE Top in Central, which was like, it's funny because I think everyone said like downstairs was like a sauna, like kind of gentleman's sauna, I guess you can say. And upstairs was like the rave place. So everyone was like, this is just like a real like clusterfuck of people.
Yeah.
And it was, the rave culture was massive. And then that started affecting Cantopop at the time. So you had local bars in Hong Kong like Cyber, that was a club in TST that was like very, very hard techno remixes of like Chinese music.
Oh, right.
Same in Macau, DTs as well. The original DTs was downstairs in Macau, and it was rave on one side and bands on the other. So you'd have this kind of thing. And then that affected like, you know, the music that was released in Cantopop. So that's like Aaron Kwok, like Kelly at that time, Kelly Chen, Leon Lai. They were releasing like full rave albums. Like, I mean, it'd be like rave and then a couple of ballads here and there, you know, just to make sure that you don't annoy your fan base too much. So, and that era was, you can see in the lyrics as well. Like Kelly Chen has a song, you know, called like Amnesia Weekend. I mean, just things like that. Basically, just I don't know. I mean, for Cantopop, the fast songs, the lyrics are quite silly usually. For slow songs, the lyrics are like uber deep. They're like Chinese literature, you know. So, I'm not all, but that's a generalization. But I think at that time you could see the rave culture influence in the fashion and music, you know, and the production. It's like kind of Eurodance, sometimes verging on GABA. Like techno elements, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
When you're in this time, like in the mid 2000s, are you like super plugged into this then Cantonese like and Cantopop scene, or is it something that you've kind of revisited like 10 years later,
No,
and because of that experience, you've been able to draw upon it?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question, and it's funny because those Canto tracks that were like the fast ones, you know, I feel like they weren't the biggest hits at the time for those artists. So actually, I was more into the karaoke songs and the rock stuff. I mentioned one of the DJs I play with now, Stefan. He was, I mean, in a punk band that was pretty massive called King Lai Chi, hardcore punk band. And at that time, LMF, Lazy Motherfucker, is like a big hip hop rock kind of hybrid group. So that kind of stuff was massive and more commercial at that time. So I think I was more plugged into the rock music, or things like Fei Wong, who was doing like a lot of, you know, stuff with Cocteau Twins, like the shoegaze albums. I mean, the kind of like indie-ish rock albums, her like Cranberries covers, those kind of things. And then also just like classic Cantopop stuff, like, and bands like Beyond, you know, who were still quite big, even though 90s is more of their kind of heyday. But in the, you know, 2000s, they were still very popular and remain popular to this day. So I think I was more plugged into that. So that, just to your question in a very roundabout way, yeah, like when I started doing the nights, and then I was like, okay, I got to play 7 hours. I'm like going religiously digging, and then finding like, oh crap, I've really like missed out on a lot of these rave tracks at the time that were like not really, you know, I wasn't really listened to, you know, at the time. So it's funny, yeah, there is a journey for myself in this. Like, and one of the best decisions I ever made for this night was like, because I think when you're planning a club night, right, in the beginning, I feel like you do it on your own. You know, your primary thought might be, oh, it's all me, like spotlight on me. I can make more money on my own. But I think at the end of the day, I sort of come to like, you know, the realization is things are better with a team. You know, you can't do it all on your own. Then when I started, like, you know, inviting other DJs and doing it together, then I started learning a lot from them and realizing, like, actually, wow, I think my selections from like 5 or 6 years ago were like really lacking in shit. Like compared to now, after like growing together as a, you know, and learning a lot from, you know, which sounds very cheesy, but, you know, in a roundabout way, yeah, that helped me have a journey of understanding music from the past that I had missed at that time. Because I feel like my friends at that time were like, we we were international school kids. I didn't have that many like local friends, I'd say. So I think we had our bubble a bit, you know. So there were a lot of tracks we missed, you know, especially in school in the 90s, man. Like we just like, who's got a mixtape? It would usually be like stuff like Wu-Tang or like No Effects, like, you know, punk music, you know. If it was Cantopop, it'd be like in karaoke only. But I wouldn't listen to it. No one would give me a mixtape of Cantopop back then. Like ever. It'd always be like, oh, this is a new like Method Man, or like, you know, or trying to be, oh, like Beasties, or like, you know, oh, Silverchair or whatever, right? You know? I think people thought Cantopop was like a bit fun, but like not cool music. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, it's honestly quite interesting seeing how the whole narrative is kind of switching up, and how like it's more and more people are really into the Cantopop, as even if they weren't before. Because I remember, at least at the last event I was at, we also brought some friends who grew up in Hong Kong, but are also not ethnically fully Chinese, and not really familiar with it, but thoroughly enjoyed the night.
Yeah.
But I think that might be another interesting kind of like next step for Cantomania, perhaps, is like how do you integrate more people who didn't even grow up with seeing these karaoke songs, because they will have a lot of fun.
Yeah, one thing I noticed is like from the Min night, where you'd have some of the Min crowd that were a lot more, maybe like Western oriented, I guess, with their culture. I mean, I don't know about the ethnicity or where they're born, but definitely like with the more Western music mindset. And then they start to notice there's a lot of Cantopop songs that cover English songs. So those are some ways at an event where I see maybe more foreigners or like guailos, I mean, for lack of a better word. I have those ones in my kind of arsenal more because I feel like they're kind of relatable to people. And there's some funny ones that a lot of local people don't really know, like Danny Chan, who's like an artist from, you know, back in the day when Leslie Cheung was big, and who died very young, tragically. He has so many English covers. And, you know, some people are like, oh, what's this? It's like It's a Sin, Pet Shop Boys, like cover of that. Really cool version. And like one of the guys is like, oh, I never heard this before. And a lot of things like that, you know, that if you dig enough, you'll find. I think I did a Spotify playlist of it. It's like I've got like 150 tracks in there. Yeah.
Okay.
Because band culture back in the day, if you look at like the 1970s in Hong Kong, so Alan Tam, who was a big artist from the 1980s, or like Sam Hoi, like those guys, when you look before they were into Cantopop or big, they were actually doing a lot of English songs, and that was the kind of wave. And it's funny, sometimes you talk to the really old cab drivers, and they're like, oh yeah, there used to be like a dance hall night in this place, and it was all like English covers and English songs, and there were like hundreds of local bands just playing English stuff. So that was the sort of genesis of that. I think probably those stars probably transitioned to Cantopop more in the 80s and 90s, especially in that time when Japan and Hong Kong were having a lot of like synergy, like Japanese songs covered in Cantonese or vice versa. You'll find a lot of them if you dig around. Like, oh, there's Japanese versions of them.
What sources are you using now then to do your digging? Like, is a lot of the stuff that you're finding on Spotify, or is there other sources for this? Because I know there's a lot of genres that still aren't on these like mainstream kind of streaming platforms, so it's quite difficult to find like new music or the music that you need for your
definitely
night.
I think that like vinyl would be my go-to for a lot of other genres, but I'd say for Canto pop or Cantonese music in general, vinyls, the original vinyls are really expensive. There's a guy in Shamsher called Gary. Is it Gary or Paul? No, it's Paul. Sorry, Paul's Records. Yeah. Anyway, I'll have to double check that. Anyway, I think it's Paul. Sorry, Vinyl Hero Paul. Anyway, he has an apartment. It's just like filled with records of every genre. And you can go to his place and be like, I need these artists, and he'll just dig them out because you can't even browse.
I've seen this place. Is it the place where he lives in? He lives in it as well, and he's got a small floor space. I've seen this recently. Oh, okay, so you'll do digging in there for new tracks and new inspiration
to find like older stuff.
Or he'll do it for you rather.
Yeah, but I mean, then a lot of the vinyls are like re-released. Right. But then in general, right, for buying Cantopop on vinyl, it's going to be like 300 up to over 1,000. There's a few shops in like Wan Chai, Mong Kok, but like there's no budget for that. You know, like sometimes for the fee I would get for playing vinyl, like a couple of vinyls, you know, would barely even, it doesn't even cover the vinyl cost, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, digging on like iTunes, Spotify, like I think like Bandcamp, I actually feel like Bandcamp has sort of declined in the last couple of years, especially I think they were bought out by Epic, I'd like to say. But it's still pretty good, Bandcamp. And then SoundCloud, and then YouTube, I think now, especially like hip hop, like a lot of, you know, stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I mean, unfortunately for some of the stuff we play that's like adverts, cartoons, I can't find the originals. Some of them are ripped from YouTube. Some of them surprisingly like really good quality, and some are like, I'm like, oh man, this is pretty shit. But it's play anyway. Whatever.
Yeah, as long as you're capturing the vibe or the nostalgia that they have.
I mean, I used to like punk music when I was a kid, right? So like I've had this feeling of like, you know, at punk shows, you know, the singer just screaming, like someone's grabbing the mic. Sometimes the guitarist don't even know how to play a guitar, apparently, you know? I mean, that to me, that was always the ethos of music that informed me a bit, you know, like, which is very DIY, you know, which I think, you know, Tania, with your stuff that you're doing quite a bit, right? Where you're still doing a lot of work, you know, yourself, like lifting things, doing things, you know, there's no stardom there, right?
Yeah.
I think for the nights, so, you know, like organizing, right? You got to get your hands dirty. I remember I did some nights with some live artists in Hong Kong that were younger, and some of them were like, I was like, can you help me with this cable? Like really dirty cables and stuff. And they were a bit like, like, this is what you have to fucking do if you want to do a show.
Yeah.
It's not glamorous. Just give me a Typhoon 8 and you're going to be with a DJ player, 2 speakers with no cab. You probably have lost like $500 from the night or something, you know, and then you've got like a case of beers and you're going to figure out how to fucking get it back to your house. And then when you wake up, your house can be covered in like stuff from the event. It's just, sometimes it's not that glam, you know. I think people have this idea of doing events as super glam, but just totally wrong, especially in Hong Kong with this climate, especially in summer, sweating your ass off.
It is, and some places where the AC is super weak.
Oh my god,
the ACs are always broken.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's actually the whole like cable thing was quite funny, because I remember seeing a YouTube video that Just Be posted about like being a DJ, and Just Be is also like popular rising DJ in Hong Kong for the past decade as well. About like one time she did a gig and the DJ after her needed some equipment, but just didn't have it or didn't even know how to like plug in the right cables and everything. And what you were saying, like when you do an event, that's the first thing you got to figure it out. If you don't know how to plug in the cables, how are you gonna play any music?
I just don't. Sometimes it's mind-boggling. Like this, someone said to me, like, "Oh, I want to add this like keyboard." So I was like, "Cool." And then he's like, "Oh, but I don't know how to like plug it in." I was like, "Google the fucking manual." It's just that. You just fucking Google the manual. Like, how hard could that be? Like, dude, I don't know. You bought it. You were the one who bought that, man. It's like in a good car. I don't know how do you drive it. Like, which happens sometimes with new cars. When I rent them, I'm like, where'd you turn this thing on, man?
Yeah, where's the button?
Like, maybe I'm showing my age now before you just put the key in, you know? Anyway, it's a bit of a tangent.
No, but it's pretty funny, especially I guess in Hong Kong. It's interesting. Again, I think want to bring back to this other event that you also did, I believe, last week. There was like a more UK music nostalgia focused, like London Calling.
Oh yeah, that's right. Called? Yeah.
I'm kind of curious to see like maybe a comparison between like Cantonese nostalgia versus UK nostalgia, and how's the energy and vibe going on this?
Yeah, so that night came of the idea from myself and Pedro, who's, you know, a local DJ. Basically, he's playing a lot of different things, and we've done nights together. And we just thought it was like that he's Zukul Salik, he's a local DJ. And he just said like, oh, I really like rave era things and, you know, rave era rock music, like, and also like, you know, things like Pixies and, you know, Clash. And when I say rave, I mean like new rave, like Block Party, things like Klaxons, things like that, like Two Door Cinema Club. So we're like, oh, why don't we just throw an event at Bamboo? And yeah, I think I've done Rock Nights as well. It's a similar vibe, I think, for sure. A bit more dance focused. I think in the Cantopop nights, we can also switch into, you know, a few ballads when, you know, in the right timing.
Yeah.
So, But I think in the emo nights and the rock nights that we've done, maybe not as much. People want to keep the tempo up. I played like a lot of rock music at Bobby's Rabble too. Did a Sevens after party there. And that was, but that was, I mean, there's some really wasted people, man. Like nowadays I'm doing this, I guess, sober DJing thing, which is not, you know, before I never used to, but nowadays, you know, maybe again, I'm getting old, man. Now that Sevens party Bobby's Rabble was amazing, but you know, I was like, I'm like too sober for this shit, man. Like, cause there was this one lady, she was just kept on, she was like, and she was like, Unwritten. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to play it. Which I'm like, I get it.
It's a banger, to be fair.
And then she kept on coming over, and she's like, Unwritten. And then I'm like, I heard you the first time. And then I think I played it, and then she's like, Unwritten. And I'm like, and then she'd been smoking outside. Well, like, that's why when you say requests, you know, you don't even know if they're going to hear the track. It was so fun. And then she like kind of collapsed on the speaker, and then the speaker like hit my head. And then so I was like, damn, I kind of miss the days where I have 10 pints before I show up before this gigs. You know, but
yeah, but you can learn to pick and choose them.
Yeah, exactly. No, I just get too hungover and just, you know, anyway.
For sober DJing, on that topic, have you realized for yourself to also get into the mood of DJing? What is the main difference from drinking, not drinking?
I think in a way that personally, I had this habit of just like from a very long time of like having a couple drinks before shows. And, you know, in certain venues, and I think the drinking culture has changed a lot in Hong Kong. That before, you know, in the early days when I was DJing, say from 2005 or 4 or 5 onwards, you know, that was still like informed by lad culture, like, you know, massive alcohol sponsorships, like really cheap drink deals. You know, being completely trash was just like normal for everyone, right? And I think one of the good things about now, although, you know, I mean, obviously it affects bar sales, but I think there's been more healthy discourse around drinking, right? Now, no one's saying you have to be Puritan, you don't need to drink, but like, you know, not drinking in nights is acceptable. And I think, which before I would say that probably wasn't the case. You know, people were expecting everyone to go out and get completely blotto. So if you're in that world as a DJ, you know, of course you're going to have a few drinks too. And nowadays I've sort of started, you know, not all the time, but I'm trying my best to just, you know, go in with the mindset of like, you know, conscious drinking around, you know, being aware of it, not just like someone gives you shots, someone gives you this and that, and just, okay, willy-nilly just drinking all of them. Because I think that I felt like before I used to be quite good at having a few drinks and DJing. I feel like the older I get, my talent for that in a weird way, I feel like it's declined a little bit. And I think that sometimes you can see like you've had too much to drink and you think that these left field song choices that you make are amazing, but in fact they're not. You know, you're actually pretty shit. You know?
Well, yeah, you mentioned that before. You know, your crowd control or like understanding the crowd and where the set is going to go. You need to be switched on to do that, and that is a talent in itself that a lot of DJs, you know, don't possess. Which in some cases they don't need to because they have a different way of DJing. They've got a story to tell and they have a particular set in mind. But in others, it's a bit more reactive, and that's a good skill to have. And yeah, I can imagine if you're out of your mind, your decision-making abilities are hindered.
I found like, I mean, basically for me, it was just like, you know, people say drinking a lot gives you confidence. And I think it actually, it depends for every person, but I think it can get to a point where it's just this crutch for people, you know. And of course, there's a lot of high-pressure situations with clubs, but, you know, and maybe, you know, make sure you have some food, some water, maybe have like a couple drinks, and then after you finish your set, you know, just you can do whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that I've noticed, like, you know, give yourself, you know, not relying on drinking, you know, then you go into the show prepared and, you know, to do a good job. And you're aware of the song choices and the crowd control, like you're saying, much more than when you're drunk. Sometimes you might be like, oh, I want to play this track. But then you're like, fuck, what's it called?
Yeah.
Or like, and then you'll be like searching in your Pioneer, and then you're just endlessly scrolling around different folders, and you're wasting time, right?
Yeah.
And then basically, you know, especially if we're playing Chinese music or Canto music, like you can't search Chinese in Pioneer. So that's another thing, you know, I want to find this artist. I'm like, oh crap, some of them are written in iTunes in English, some are written in Chinese. So then you got to go to all artists, and then you're like, it's like 1 minute left. Scrolling down, like look normal. It was like, okay, I've got 20 seconds left to pick the next.
Just anxiety of that kills me.
And then sometimes when you're like, okay, I've queued it up, and then some of the older models might just go glitchy on you, and then you've queued, and it goes back to the last song you played. A couple of times it's like something that's happened. I've got on the mic and be like, how's it going? And you'd be like, shit, are you on playing it? Or whatever, just funny things like that. It always happens, man. Sometimes one player will like just peace out. That happened to us the other day. And I was just like playing off one player for like 20 minutes. It's not ideal, but I think the more experience I get with events, the more I realize it's sound checking, all this stuff. It's not bullshit. It's so necessary. And like picking good people to work with, especially now. Like I feel like you have an event. Luckily, I feel like feedback's been like good on my events, but sometimes you get someone like online, or like anywhere, wherever it is, like Freds, IG, like YouTube. Now there's so many avenues for people to have a little complain or bitch about anything now, so you just don't want to give anyone an excuse to, right?
Yeah.
Especially if they have legitimate or valid things that. Sometimes there's a lot of things that are just really out of your control, right, with events, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah.
Like, so, a lot of things.
But if you're sober, you can deal with them a lot easier.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of the things you can control, right? And look, shout out to the artists that can play when they're fucked up. Like, that's a skill in itself. But also, if you're aware that, perhaps your skills and expertise isn't as good in that's a good respect to have for your audience, for the people that are at your events.
I mean, I think as well that I do enjoy a drink or two. So, like, to be, I decide, like, if you want to have longevity as well. I mean, the fact is, you're just not getting younger, right? I mean, not everyone could be like Keith Richards and those guys, like, or like, like people like, Duff from like Guns N' Roses, who said he was drinking like 3 bottles of vodka a day. Minimum.
I mean, that's
he's sober now. I think even a lot of the rock stars, man, they're like doing like gym every day, and they're taking care of themselves because it's relentless, this sort of thing. If you're just hungover all the time, you're gonna be so tired. And you can see like I think there was this like worshipping of like drinking and drugs in DJing culture and also music culture. And it's good for some people, but it's really bad for others. Look at Amy Winehouse. The fans would love it when, she'd show up and get pissed and pass out in her shows. It became almost like something that people were encourunging them. And like Avicii, people like that.
Post Malone as well, isn't it? You've seen him on stage in bad situations.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking, who's looking after these people, man?
Yeah.
Who's telling them, like, maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously a huge topic, but personally, I think, like, I'm trying consciously to, manage that. I think a lot of DJs are similar, in my opinion.
So once we're having this conversation, and hopefully more people hear this, and perhaps they can reach out and chat about it.
I mean, if you ask some of my friends or whatever, they're probably going to say, like, well, this is a load of shit, man.
No, but I can relate. When I start doing parties, I was in a complete no drinking phase. I'm I'm only having like kombucha, tea, water at all the parties. Party's gonna end super early, but we all go through phases, and I think it's really more about like being conscious and aware and balancing it out. Because we don't want to take the fun away out of life too, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think when when I saw you last time at Sonic Kitchen, like I was doing dry Jan, and there was like a couple of bottles of this and that floating around. And I was like looking like, darn it! Like I had my non-alcoholic beer. I was like, this is. But after a couple, then you're like, it's not really beer, is it? Oh, this is very good though. Some of the beers, non-alc beers, are good, so can't complain. Anyway.
You've touched on quite a lot of musical influences that you've been through, like the punk, rock, hip hop and R&B, maybe more hip hop rather than R&B, and obviously the canto.
Yeah.
In the world is in a precarious political situation where if the world were to end, you might need to pick 2 tracks in an album that you would take with you. Dystopian discs, we're calling it. Dystopian discs, what are your 2 tracks, and what's your album that you would take with you in the event of this?
Oh, so okay, just to be clear on this, it's an album, one album,
and 2 like singles or tracks. Yeah.
If you have 3 albums, that's also okay.
Yeah. We're not super strict with it.
Okay, actually, this is this is a really crazy question in a way, because it's just like, but you might get quite bored if you were like, just have one album. So I'll give myself a couple. I mean,
Yeah, but the world's ending, don't forget. So you haven't got to listen. Well, you have got to listen to it for the rest of the time, but the rest of the time is not that far away. Yeah.
Okay.
The end is near, but unknown when.
I mean, I'll go and pick like something. Obviously, I've been playing a lot of Cantonese music with Cantomania and things like that. I think for an album which like I always go back to, like, over the years before that I was playing Cantonese music, is like DJ Shadow for me. Introducing this, is one of the albums which I just like periodically listen to, which I've got the vinyl. I've seen him live quite a few times, which I read a book about the whole album and the process that he did. And I've always find that album was the first version I ever had was when my brother, Tony, was studying in Beijing. And at the time in Beijing, there were a lot of like these bootleg CDs, basically. I'm not dobbing him in, And I don't know if what it was, but they were in China. You could buy like, it was sort of like Napster before Napster existed. It was like you could buy. He went to Beijing for a year to study, and he came back with like folder of like just like crazy like jazz, like Sun Ra, like the whole like old Coltrane, like Alice Coltrane, John Coltrane, Miles Davis. And he had all this stuff like, from, Aphex Twin, like, and then he had like this DJ Shadow. And I was like, what the hell is this? And then I was like listening, and I was like, oh, this is like really cool. And I've just gone back to that culture of DJ Shadow, which was like digging, like, and going through like a lot of historical music and having the attitude of being able to update it and modernize it and then change moods from like, dark to euphoric to energetic to sort of language. So that, to me, that influenced a lot. So I would say that album, and I just like the tracks in general. So that would be one of the albums. So if I was to pick a single, I think I'll have to go with something which is Cantonese. And I would say, Cantomania, as I mentioned, the concept of like what we play has evolved a lot. Nowadays we play like lots of different genres. And so sometimes when people say, oh, it's Canton disco, I'm like, yeah, but it's not disco as you know it. And there's a band called NYPD who's from Hong Kong who are probably one of the best bands to come out, in the last 10 years.
Yeah, Nanyang Pai Doi.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I love playing Me and G. It's one of my favorite tracks by them. And I'll just take that to the desert island with me. Nice. Yeah, I like the punky element. I like the fact that they have kind of like funny lyrics, and that song's about like a secondhand clothing shop, which I used to go to a lot as well. And I think as well, when you research them online, like people write these like kind of serious essays about them. Like, oh, this is about, postmodern deconstructive Hong Kong society. I don't know if they'd agree with that, but like, it's just funny to me. Like,
yeah.
It's kind of a band where they can be deceptively simple, but then actually quite complex.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take Me and G with me. And I think, let me take two more singles, because I love Beyond, and like, Hoi Fu Tin Hong, which is like one of the big songs from Beyond, probably, and one of the most famous songs for Hong Kong. I'd probably just have to shout that out because of how much I love Beyond and how tragic it was and sad for everyone, in the 90s, and just basically the beautiful meaning, lyrics, videos amazing, guitar solos great, like, everything's performed perfectly. So I'd say that. And yeah, okay, those are two there. If I want to pick, let me say, I would say like one of my favorite counterpop artists as well, who's Eason Chan. And when I was back in London, after playing in Manchester and seeing my grandmother, I went to his concert. Went to 2 nights actually in a row, just because one of my friends had a corporate box. A long story. So we went, and then my friend Ben, who is the guy who threw the London party, he's one of the organizers in the organizing team for Eason Chan. So he's like, I was like, oh, you can get tickets, sweet. So you know, I would say Eason Chan, he has a very difficult song to sing called Phao Kwa, which he sang on his encore, but in Cantonese they always say encore. So during his encore for a London show, he sang that, and it's got a really incredible high note on it at the end. And when I play at Cantomania, like that's the one where I can just turn off the volume 100% and then just listen to everyone like screaming.
Yeah.
Because back in the day when I was really into karaoke culture, you know, we just go to like karaoke and, you know, just scream stuff. And it just, you know, it's really reminded me of like, you know, just karaoke rooms and you walk past them and you just hear like this, like, yeah, you know. But then some people take karaoke so seriously. Like I got booted off karaoke like a few times. I remember one time in Singapore, I got booted off. I got booted off in Edinburgh in uni like a couple of times. So yeah, karaoke is funny. Like some people, you know, they can take it too seriously.
Yeah. That's their stage to shine.
A couple of my friends, like go karaoke with them, and then they'd be like, "Oh man, Pete, I think your tones are really off on some of those lines." And I was like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm not saying. And then I had to storm. I'm not singing karaoke with you guys. And I'll be like, I just want you. And then I was like, no, I just came here to fucking sing. Yeah, like, okay, maybe I missed a tone or two. I'm sorry, you know.
Yeah, what's like the X Factor giving you the red X? Get off the stage.
Exactly. I was like, wow, like you guys, like, because like I don't know, like I think if you want to talk about Cantonese pronunciation and like getting everything right, which I've always screw up. And I think it's something which I think a lot of people learning Cantonese find it like very challenging, right? Because it, you know, like, you know, a lot of what you say via tones seriously changes the meaning of stuff, you know? Although you know, in general, people say, oh, you know, Pete's got really good Cantonese and stuff, but like, I am a second language speaker, even though I was grew up in Hong Kong. So yeah, there's room for screwing up. And I remember when I screwed up in karaoke a couple of times, like some of my brutal friends were like, it's very Hong Kong, right? In Hong Kong, people just tell you what they think.
Yeah.
And my English uncle came to Hong Kong, and like one of my aunties, my mother's friend, was like, "Hey, Roger, you look really fat now." And like, it's just something you might say here. Like in the UK, you would never say that, you know? It's like, why do you look so bald and fat? You know? Anyway.
That's why cultural appropriation is not a thing here.
Yeah.
We're inherently mean.
No, I don't know. I think people just like to tell you like what's up here more sometimes. You know, can be more direct. You know, like, you know, for example, if you're going to the bathroom or something in the UK, you just go, "Oh, I'm going to the washroom," but then here you might get like, "Oh, I'm going to take a big shit." You know, so like, anyway, sorry. Anyway, sorry, we're straying a bit now. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pete.
Yeah, thank you. On that note.
It's been super fun learning about so much music history as well, from all the back in the 90s to early 2000s to early 2010s to now. It's been really fun learning about all of that, and congratulations on Cantomania, and looking forward to all the tracks that you're going to release.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll share with you our new releases and things. And also, just on a quick note, I know we're finishing now, obviously, but thanks for, actually one of the big reasons recently why we're getting a lot more hits is in a way from a reel that got posted at one of our events, which in fact, like Tanya had introduced me to the club for the event.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
you're an integral part of Pete's story.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
A little part.
Yeah. And anyway. It's a different story in itself, but anyway.
But it's a great venue and great event, and I think it's definitely a really good location for the visuals that you also like to incorporate.
Yeah.
Which I think we didn't mention in earlier in the podcast, but I think that is something that's super cool. You always have a really good visual artist that combine very nostalgic, like compilation of, again, advertisements from the past, or commercials as advertisements.
Yeah, so just shout out to him. That's Josh. Josh is our VJ and visual director, basically, who I know it's a long story, but I was DJing at a wedding party and we started chatting afterwards. And I know him incredibly randomly. And he's half from Hong Kong, and he's half English. Yes. 100%. I think, yes, English. So, and he's got, I was just like chatting with him, and suddenly he was like I realized how into the visual culture he is. So it's been like kind of serendipitous in a way. Yeah, and he's a really big part of it, 100%. The visuals are so important now. Anyway.
Thanks.
Cool.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Oh, camera thing.
So many cameras.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.